never have any idea when I'm supposed to start or stop, so, sorry. Well, hi. Driving here was just beautiful. I came from Redwood Shores, maybe 30 minutes south of San Francisco, and drove over that empty place where it still looks like California, and it was really something. I mean, to say to myself, wow, this is Brown Hills. This is what's supposed to be here. Yeah, it was lovely. The abundance, forgiveness. I've been teaching this stuff for a long time. I started the Stanford University Forgiveness Project almost 20 years ago. And we have taught forgiveness in really crappy places in this world where horrible things have happened. And we've taught forgiveness to rich people who can't forgive the fact that somebody might have put a piece of their property 1 inch onto their property. Of all the spiritual qualities, it appears that for whatever reason, forgiveness is by far and away the hardest. I remember once many years ago, I talked at a lot of New Thought churches all up and down the state. A lot of religious science places and a lot of unity places. And I remember I went to a church in Southern California, a religious science church, and she had invited me and paid my way to come down and do their Sunday service. And we're talking beforehand, and she was saying she had run like a 7-week program on spirituality, and she had had a week on abundance, and a week on, gratitude, and a week on compassion, and a week on this, and she had like 40 or 50 people, and like lots for the abundance workshop, and like 4 for forgiveness. And what she was reflecting on, and what I reflect on all the time, is what makes forgiveness so hard and what's so unbelievably challenging about it, even for people who try to be spiritual, is as opposed to abundance where you're getting, in forgiveness you're giving. And the ego is tenacious in trying to make sure your consciousness is oriented towards getting. That's the solidifying lie that's at the heart of all of our suffering, is that we have to get more all the time, that we never actually have enough. And that causes us to be greedy and fearful, and causes us to make enemies of people, and causes us to tighten up all over the place, because we never have enough, ever. And it's the Buddhists, I think, refer to this as the hungry ghost. That deep inside of us is an endless well of suffering, because the self can never be satisfied, ever. And so it's always grasping and making enemies of people and putting people down and judging ourselves, and just this endless creation of difficulty. And forgiveness is one of the qualities that has been bred in us, latent in most of us, but there. Maybe generosity is another one, which to me is the quality we should be looking for, not necessarily abundance, but generosity. Because the antidote to our selfishness and our self-absorption is, what can we give? Like, what can we share? Which is really hard. I mean, really hard. I mean, it's so hard that, you're not quite in the Bay Area. I mean, you're very close, but certainly around where I live, it would be almost impossible to meet somebody who thinks they have enough of anything. Anything. Well, and if you look at how pernicious that is in our culture, I work at Stanford, I've worked there forever. So many people think if my kid doesn't get into Stanford, somehow I and they have failed, which is nuts. Or if I'm not wealthy, I failed in some way, which is equally nuts. Or if I'm not powerful and I'm not successful, or if I don't go to France, or whatever it is, like just all the craziness that we have, that we define ourselves by, that causes us never to relax and makes it really hard for me in my world, or thinking about it, to be generous, forgiving, and kind. Just the qualities of giving, not of taking. You know, what can I give? What can I share? Well, you'll never, ever, ever, ever want to share anything if you don't feel like you have enough. And what's so interesting about that, and again, I've been teaching this for a very long time, unforgiveness is a statement that the world hasn't given you enough, which is just so entertaining. Like, it's an accounting. Unforgiveness is an accounting system, which is, okay, like I've had a decent mother, awful father, crappy siblings, but, you know, my dog was good. You know what I mean? Like, it's like an accounting. And then I was married for 8 years, but then the partner blew up, you know, so that wasn't so good. I have 2 kids, one doesn't call. I'm stuck in traffic. Is my life good enough to be gracious about traffic? Have I been given enough? I mean, it's always an accounting of, do you have enough? Always. If you have enough, you don't get pissed off. If you have enough, you're not like, ooh, let me grab more for me. Let me make sure my little pile is always safe. So it's interesting, unforgiveness is an accounting that says, no, I haven't been given enough. My life hasn't been rich enough, it hasn't been rewarding enough, I haven't benefited enough from life, so I can't be gracious. I can't be the one to say, yeah, I've suffered. Everybody suffers. You know, it's so, I mean, the Buddhists nailed that with the, you know, life is basically dealing with suffering. Because even as I was driving through those hills, and they're gorgeous, other parts of my mind were saying, wow, this is what it used to be like close to where I live. And how many more years before all those hills are plowed over? I mean, they're heading this way. No, it's just life. It changes. Everything changes. And all of us want to hold on to things that change. So there's deep suffering. And I mean, that's the heart of Buddhism. We're trying to hold on to things that can't be held on to. Other people, our youth, anything. And so within that accounting, which is the reason why gratitude and awe and appreciation are so critical, is if you don't work against the constricted, selfish mind, you will create deficits and grudges all over the place without even recognizing it, all over the place. You'll be blaming other people, you'll be shouting at the TV, whatever it is. Or you'll be looking, I mean, our current political system right now, I mean, just reading an article this morning before I came here, both candidates are staggeringly unpopular. Nobody's ever seen anything like this where, you know, Hillary Clinton has a 55% like stark negativity rating and Trump's is 61%. And the only motivation really that people have to vote are because they don't want the other person in power. No, that's the motivation. And the fear that the Democrats put about Trump and the Trump puts about Hillary. The fear is, that's the basic energy of our political system right now. So both parties are shouting, we don't have enough. We can't trust. That greed is an essential. I mean, that's from both parties. Both parties have gotten candidates that have massive needs for way more than anybody could ever need, and massive, some aspect of dishonesty around it. So that's the collective culture of fear, of inside, I don't have enough. I'm never enough. And so forgiveness is like a changing in that accounting. It's an altering of it. You know, and it begins with noticing the good and noticing the generosity around one. You know, again, 20 years ago when we began the Forgiveness Project, I would go out and teach, and I would be in groups of people, and we really didn't know what we were doing because we invented this. I mean, you don't invent forgiveness, but we created a secular method of teaching it, which is unusual still. But you know, I would go out into audiences, and there were a small handful of us working on this, and I would listen to them talk about all the ways that they had been harmed. And the world has endless ways of harming us. I mean, the fact that it's going to kill all of us is like one of its ways. You know what I mean? Like you're toast. It's just when. And that's the truth. And everybody you love is toast. It's just when. And so, I mean, this is not an easy experience to be in a body. And so, but I would hear people like complain about their parents, their grandparents, their bosses, their wife, their husband, their ex-wife, their ex-husband, their kids, the guy at the corner who gave them bad service, the guy who lied, the person who did this. It was like a cacophony of complaining. And I thought to myself, well, that's a point of view from the basic difficulty of this life, which is, well, let me complain about it. What I realized that most of what people were saying is true, but it was unbalanced. And that's where the problem came in, because their accounting was off. So one person would say, I had the crappiest parents. And I'd think, and listen, well, it's probably true. She probably had crappy parents. But that's not her whole life. And she's not working hard enough to fill the scales in the other direction so that her accounting becomes more accurate. So somebody might say, I had crappy parents, and I might think, well, did you eat this morning? Well, why isn't that in the equation? And there's 1 billion people tonight who will go to bed without food, so you have no claim on victim status. Even though everybody wants a victim status, you're eating. Your kids are going to school in safe schools. No warplanes are flying overhead. You had a good day. No, I'm really sorry if 31 years ago you had crappy parents, but get real. So the accounting was completely off, just completely off. And it was bad accounting that I saw that was the issue. So imagine if you change the victim narrative, this is what I think, to, well, I had crappy parents. I may have even had a crappy partner or two. And I'm not so hot myself, you know what I mean? It's like, but I live in this beautiful environment. I can drive to Safeway and get more food than kings could have not that long ago. I turn on my stupid TV and there's 700 channels. No, but it's all accounting. It's all what you pay attention to and what your method of assets and deficits is. That's all it is. We have a culture that wants us to have unimaginable greed. Really, unimaginable greed for useless things, and feeds our fear all the time by saying you need more, all the time. So they make it very hard to have an honest accounting of what you have and what you don't have. So as, were you loved? Well, I have people, I work with people all over the world, and the human being is so justifiably scared, but does the wrong things with it. So being anxious and scared is our core reality until we are able to have a bigger spiritual perspective about who we actually are. But absent from that bigger perspective of who we actually are, anxiety and fear is your basic orientation. Because you, as a separate entity guarding the health of this body, are in a doomed pursuit. Because you can't guard this body. You could only stretch out its life a little bit and make it a little better, but ultimately, we're dust. You can't make this person more important than all the 7.5 billion other people, yet that's what most of our energy is spent trying to do. Make ourselves special. No, seriously, this is what we spend all day on. And it doesn't work. But we're driven by this anxiety that won't go away, because it can't go away, because it's an accurate reflection of reality. You're vulnerable all the time. You get in a car, you're vulnerable. Your kid goes away to school, you're vulnerable. Your body's gonna rot out. Those are just true. So we deal with that anxiety with greed and hostility to defend ourselves. It doesn't necessarily work in terms of creating a good planet for all of us to live on. But if you change the accounting a little and you just think to yourself, well, yeah, many situations have been difficult, many people have been hostile and toxic, and that's a part of the story that's true. But there's other parts of the story, many other parts of the story. And when those get added in to our story of ourselves, then the forgiveness balance starts to shift. If you tell the truth about your life, rather than just the anxiety-generated complaint, if you tell the truth, forgiveness becomes more likely. And I just teach people the simplest things, like I woke up this morning in a bed, there was food in a refrigerator, I had running water, the sewer system appeared to work, there's a lot good, and that's nothing to do with me yet. Right? That's just what I have the luck or the fortune to have surrounded myself with. I can think. Some people can tolerate me as difficult as I am. Well, that's true for everyone. We're all difficult, and if you're lucky, people tolerate you and like you and even love you. But it changes the accounting. And then if you have a more honest accounting, it's not so easy to defend taking offense. Like, okay, so what? Somebody made a mistake. What does that mean? Lots of mistakes get made. what is it? What is wrong with me for even getting so attached to a mistake? We all make mistakes. Or in a couple relationship, like you get the stunning news that your partner is imperfect. You're kidding, right? Like that somehow comes as news. And then you think, like, how can such a perfect person as me put up with such an imperfect person as them? Well, if you change the accounting to be a little more realistic, which is that you are so deeply flawed, as is everybody else, that it's amazing that people love you, and have a little humility around it, and tell the truth, you're a lot more gentle to be around. Of course my partner's flawed. If they weren't flawed, they'd run from the hills from me. You know, if they were this great human being, what the hell would they want with me? But it's all an accounting system. So if you find yourself easily frustrated, easily negative, you got to go in and reset that accounting system, because it's off. If you can't, I mean, this is one of my, and I'll stop in a minute or two. There are two, like, ways that I describe, and again, I taught at Stanford for 20 plus years, and I've literally watched that area become choked. Literally choked with both people and greed. Both, because the attitude has changed and the number has changed. But I say to myself, as part of this process, because we're all trying to figure this out together, like I say, if you walk into Whole Foods, and like, you know, that's the metaphor for abundance. No, it is, like Whole Foods. Just having a Whole Foods is a metaphor for abundance. It's that simple. But if you walk into Whole Foods and you even check, like impatiently, how many people are ahead of you in line, you're nuts. You just don't get it. Right? If that degree of abundance isn't enough, seriously, to just go, thank you, I'll wait 5 minutes. You're crazy. I mean, this is my own language to myself. And then the other one is traffic, which is, no, if you can't sit for 10, 15 minutes in traffic, you're just not happy enough with your life. It's all about accounting. But that's what it turns out to be. If you can't sit for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you're not perceiving your life in a happy way. Because a happy person could spend 5, 10 minutes in traffic. Why? What would be the deal? Somebody who had attention to the fullness of life, what would they be so tense about? So what I see and what I'm getting at is forgiveness is practiced in those tiny little moments. It's a truthfulness about yourself. Like, am I perceiving the world in such a way that I can get angry and tense around lines or traffic? If I am, I'm too hostile. And I need to shift. I need to notice the fullness much more. I need to find it. And if and when you ever do tell the truth about yourself, it's very easy to find. That's the good news. Once you stop blaming all sorts of other things, and once it is that you stop holding on to the victim status, which is really hard to let go of, it's not that hard. It really isn't. It's not that hard. You end up, and this is where I'll stop. One of the things we learn because most of the Forgiveness Project is about forgiving other people, not like dogs or something, or gerbils. No, it's like there's so many people in each of our lives that we take for granted. So instead of filling that space with all the ways that people have let you down, fill it with acknowledgement of what has been done for you. Because it's not that complicated. You know, and this is where I'll stop with that. I remember I gave this talk, you know, I've been doing this for a while. I gave this talk like 1,500 times, and in the middle of one of the talks, I said to myself, I literally said, oh shit. My wife has been doing my laundry for 15 years. I've never said thank you. Like right in the middle of the talk. Because that's the mind that isn't generous. It sees what's not there. Anyway, thank you. I hope you, thank you.